Hey everyone, this is Chris. I'm here with Sarah, and today we're going to be speaking with John Gentry. He is a candidate for office in Tennessee, and he is definitely on our side, one of those ones that we definitely need to get in office. So I wanted to take some time today to give him an opportunity to talk about what it is that he stands for, and also go ahead and share with you guys what he's been able to successfully do, which is something that all of us have been trying for so long to be able to do, and that is to get our voices heard before Congress. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to John. Go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into this, and we'll get started.
Sure. My name's John Gentry. I'm a candidate for state senate in Sumner and Trousdale County, Tennessee. My background, I was a Force Recon Marine for 8 years. That's like a Navy SEAL, but for the Marine Corps. And after the Marine Corps, I went to college and became a certified public accountant. And that's what I do for a living in my day job. I work as a financial analyst. But starting about 2014, I became aware of corruption in government. I never dreamed that we had a problem, and until I saw it firsthand through our corrupt court system. And I sued judges and attorneys, took two cases to the Supreme Court of the United States. I couldn't even get heard, like literally cases dismissed, and that happens to everybody, that these guys are literally above the law, that judges protect judges. Justice Gorsuch said any attack or criticism of a judge is an attack or criticism on all the brothers and sisters of the road. And that's the way these guys look at it. If you're attacking one of us, you're attacking all of us. And so they all protect each other. So you would think going through the Supreme Court of the United States, you would give up at that point. You just went to the highest court in the land. What I recognized is I couldn't get relief through the judicial system. So I started looking at the legislative branch and how can we get relief in there. And what I've learned are some incredible, powerful constitutional rights that we have that we've never been taught about, that are in our federal constitution and also continue to exist in our state constitutions. And so, for the last 10 years, I've been fighting to reform corruption in government. I've made some progress. I've got some bad judges removed from office, and I've caused judicial oversight agencies to be reorganized and restructured. And these oversight agencies now have oversight of the oversight agency, and we're starting to see, here in Tennessee, judges being suspended without pay when they're bullying and harassing litigants in the courtroom. So that's, some incredible progress.
It sure is. I mean,
Today. But what I've come to realize, though, is government is not going to truly reform and restore itself to the form of government that was created by the founders and what they intended. It's never going to happen. It's going to have to come from the people. And the only way that it's going to come from the people is we have to educate them about these constitutional rights that we have. We need to start teaching them about these rights in our state constitution, as well as our federal constitution, and show them, how to exercise these rights. And I know in my heart, this is the only solution. It's going to have to come from the people. Mm-hmm. and restoring constitutional rights and the forms of government that were established in our state and federal constitution. So that's what I'm about. Is I use my campaign for office as a platform to educate people. As a candidate for office, I go knocking door to door, I make phone calls, talking to voters out there, and it's always about, did you know we have these rights in our state constitution? Let me teach you about these rights. And I've taught thousands now. And so, I think Tennessee is going to be ground zero for restoring the republic, because we've got the best constitution amongst all the states. You guys are out of California, right?
we're in California right now, but we're from different states. She's from Virginia and I'm from Florida.
Oh, okay. Yes, California Constitution has been amended so many times that it is not the Republican form of government that was approved by the Congress when California became a state. And that's going to be the first step for California is uh, restoring the Constitution, the way it was intended. Because right now it's a mess out there in California.
Yeah, we've got a
That's,
huge
that's
issue
what I'm
with
about, teaching people.
the corruption. The corruption's so deep. I mean, every single judge and every single attorney are all members of the Bar Association, and we know that. And we know that all these members of the legislature, these Democrats and Republicans, they've been enacting statutes, codes, and ordinances for well over 100 years that implement and enforce slavery in this country. And that's really what we're experiencing when we don't have courts that are just. We have courts that are corrupted and entirely corrupted. What we're dealing with is slavery. Like to be able to be imprisoned, like with 1.8 million people in this country, and to not have due process of law in the courts, and to have 1 million divorces a year annually, and to not have due process in those courts, and to have them in closed hearings where confidentiality protects the wrong people. That's not freedom.
Next order, Ms. Clark.
Yeah, I always like to talk about, what are the solutions here? And I just went full screen. Let me see if I can get also here. But let me see if can I share my screen with you?
Oh, absolutely.
Uh, this is what I want to talk about or solutions on here. Let me see if I can bring this up.
Petitions and memorials. Ms. Clerk. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Rule 15, we have a brief statement regarding a petition of remonstrance statement filed by Representative Halsey. It reads, I'm approaching the Tennessee House Chief Clerk on behalf of Mr. John Gentry with this petition and statement. Involves a petition of grievances. 1, unconstitutional and void statutes. 2, failure to address grievances. 3, judicial reform. 4, reinstitution of constitutionally guaranteed rights. Signed, Bud Halsey, Tennessee State Representative.
That was the first time that a citizen has been heard on the floor of the House in more than 170 years. It is the first time a citizen has exercised that right in Tennessee since 1850. And as a result of that, they removed almost a dozen corrupt judges from the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct. And then they reorganized that agency. When I exercised that right, I was asking that agency to be abolished because it's the fox watching the hen house, judges protecting judges. What they chose to do is to reorganize it. And instead of all judges, it's now 8 new judges, 2 attorneys, and 6 citizens. And they have to report to the legislature and show them that they're actually doing their job. And right now, it's just a wrist slap. They're suspending judges without pay, but it's progress, and it's a step. And I had to fight to actually be heard like that on the floor. I had to stand up and defend my constitutional right. I had to bring lawsuits against the Speaker of the House and the Senate and against the clerks of both houses, just to get that far. And so what this right is about, in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, Congress shall make no law abridging the right of the people to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's what exercise of that right looks like.
Mm-hmm.
In the annals of Congress, you can find that on the Library of Congress website. They actually have the proceedings and debates from the first Congress through the 18th Congress. And you can see at least 1 per week, sometimes 2 or 3 per week, sometimes 2 or 3 a day. Petitions from citizens were announced on the floor of the Congress. Mm-hmm. They were sent to committee, and then they were deliberated on, and then they would send it back to the floor for a vote. And the United States Congress, back in the 1800s, used to actually pass bills granting and denying petitions for redress of grievances or other applications by citizens. They used to actually pass legislation like this. This is truly what a government of, by, and for the people is all about. Citizens actually participating and being
Exactly.
heard in legislative houses like that. In our Tennessee Constitution, and it's a little different in other state constitutions, a few states are as good as the Tennessee Constitution. Texas, Kentucky, Alabama. There's a few other states that are as good as Tennessee's Constitution. A lot of them have been weakened, especially the newer states. This right was weakened in the constitutions. But in Tennessee, it says Article 1, Section 23, citizens have a right to peaceably assemble together for their common good, to instruct their representatives, and to apply to those invested with the powers of government for redress of grievance or other proper purposes by address or remonstrance. So let's break this down. Citizens have a right to assemble together, peaceably assemble together for their common good. Most people think that's about protecting street protests. It absolutely is not. What that right is about is people like us coming together and talking about what do we want government to do or stop doing? What laws do we want government to pass? What grievance do we have that we want government to redress? That is what the right of assembly is about, is people coming together and talking about what do we want government to do or stop doing. Now, the second part, this is only in 16 state constitutions. We have a right to instruct our representatives. And this also plays with Article 1, Section 31 in the Tennessee Constitution, and actually lays out the boundaries of the state. And at the end, it says, over this land, the people have the right of exercising sovereignty. So when we understand what is the right to instruct, what is the right to exercise sovereignty, back in those annals of Congress that I was telling you about, they have the proceedings and debates. They were talking about putting in the right to instruct representatives in the federal Constitution. And from that discussion, we can understand what does the right to instruct mean. And what came out of that discussion was that they have a duty to hear the instructions and then to consider them and obey, actually, if it comes from a majority of the people. They have to obey the instructions. During that discussion, was Albert's Jerry out of Massachusetts. He said, do gentlemen not conceive where the instructions may be so general as to come from all of our constituents? If they do, it is the sovereign will. For gentlemen will not contend that sovereignty vests in the legislature. The friends and patrons of this Constitution have always held that sovereignty resides in the people, and they do not part with it on any occasion. And to say sovereignty vests in the people and they have not a right to instruct is absurd to the last degree. So here in Tennessee, we have that right to exercise sovereignty. And we know what sovereignty means from that discussion. It means if all of us want it, it's the sovereign will. And so here in Tennessee, I'm teaching people how to get term limits, how to exercise the right to instruct representatives, the right to exercise sovereignty, demanding term limits here. And so I'm going to bring together the people of the state of Tennessee, and we're going to demand term limits. I hope the other states follow our lead, and then we're going to do the same thing and go to the Congress. And I hope to see that in my lifetime out there. So we have that right to assemble, talk about what do we want government to do or stop doing. We have the right to instruct representatives. And we know from founding discussions, that if all of us want it, they have to obey the instructions. And then the last part, and this is the most important part, that citizens have a right to apply to those invested with the powers of government for redress or proper purpose by address or remonstrance. There's only 13 state constitutions that actually protect the right of citizens to orally address the legislative houses. You
I
know,
had a quick question about that, if you don't mind. Well, regardless of what a state's constitution is, under the constitution that we hold as we the people, aren't these rights still applicable on a national level? I know your focus is Tennessee,
Absolutely.
but those rights are for every person in every state, regardless of what their state's constitution says.
Our federal constitution, I have found no examples of citizens addressing the Congress. We don't have the right to orally address Congress, but we absolutely have a right to petition them. And we have a right to remonstrate to them. And a remonstrance, that's an old word. If you go back to the earlier Black's Law Dictionary, because they're rewriting legal meanings, being deceitful of what these words actually mean, like they changed the definition of republic. They changed the definition of democracy to suit the corrupt oligarchy that we have today. That they're changing the definitions. So I like to go back to the 4th or 5th edition to get the true meaning. But the definition of a remonstrance is a formal written protest against government officials or government policy. That's what a remonstrance is. And in several state constitutions, that it says that we can make that application by address, petition, or remonstrance. There's several state constitutions that have all three: address, petition, and remonstrance. And so, you know, there's 13 states that have the right to address. This is something, you know, I'm working on here in Tennessee, but very soon I'm also going to work on restoring this right to the United States Congress. And there actually have been a couple of applications, I think back in like the 70s or 80s, I found them on the congressional website, that there was somebody that exercised this right. But it's in their legislative houses have rules of order, just like courts have rules of procedure, rules of evidence. They have, in Tennessee, they have permanent rules of order. And these are the rules that the legislative houses follow when they're in session and practicing making law. They have these rules of order, and it's you have to go check what your state government's rules of order are. You know, what's specific to your state. In Tennessee, it's Rule 15 in the House, and they have a similar rule in the Senate. It says, before petitions shall be received and read at the table, a brief statement must be filed with the clerk. So when I exercise this right, I emailed the entire Tennessee General Assembly, said I'm going to be exercising this right for the first time since 1850. And I encourage you to embrace this opportunity. And so the first day of the session, I went down there, and there wasn't anybody around. I found I went to the clerk's office for the House, and her staff, like, she's out in meetings, she's running around the building. She was avoiding me. And then I went to the clerk for the Senate, and he was nowhere to be found. And I just found some random guy in the hallway. I said, hey, do you know where the clerk of the Senate is? And he's like, you know, who are you? What do you want? And I said, I'm John Gentry. I want to file a remonstrance. He's like, oh, he knew who I was because of my email. So he went around the corner. He came back. He said, the clerk for the Senate is waiting in chambers in the Capitol. So I went over there. He flipped through it, file stamped it, and entered that into the record for the Tennessee Senate. The clerk for the House was avoiding me all day. So I'm walking up and down 8 floors, going through hallways, trying to find her. I finally caught her in the hallway, and I said, here, I want to file this. She says, you can't. And I said, why not? She said, it has to be filed by a member. I was like, well, where does it say that? She's like, well, that's our policy. I'm like, where's your policy? Hadn't been done in 170 years. And she said, well, that's just our policy. So I took out my phone. I was like, can I get a video of you refusing this? She literally ran to her office and slammed the door.
Wow.
And so I went out to email 99 members of the Tennessee House of Representatives. I will one of you file this for me? And this one member, Bud Halsey, out of District 18, very honorable man, he invited me to his office and he said, you know, there's some things in here I agree with you on. And he said, I'm going to go across the hallway. I'm going to talk to some of my colleagues, see if I'm not going to get my head chopped off. Then he called me up about 5 o'clock and he's like, well, Mr. Gentry, I thought of it. He said, I don't know what's going to happen. So I ran back to my desk because they live stream and I watched that video that we watched earlier of the announcement of my remonstrance. And I was so excited, you know, to just being heard like that is healing, man.
It is.
It's healing just to be heard like that. And so I was, you know, and then, you know, they removed judges. I mean, I didn't get any redress. They didn't get rid of wrongdoers, you know, the actual corrupt ones. They just, you know, reorganized this agency and removed those judges, you know, from judicial oversight. But it was, you know, it was
Something happened.
Tremendous.
Something happened.
And you were heard.
You know, and there's in the Tennessee Archives Library, and this is, you know, I encourage people in other states, go research. In Tennessee, there are thousands of examples of citizens exercising this right back in the early 1800s, the late 1700s. You know, as I mentioned, it stopped 1850, and that's when we got into the Civil War. And that's actually why they stopped, is because they were just swarmed with petitions for and against slavery in legislative houses across the country and in the Congress. They were just slammed with them. They couldn't do anything else. They're just in there presenting petitions, and they're all saying the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
either for or against. And then, you know, after the Civil War, we were decimated as a country, you know, especially here in Tennessee. There wasn't anything left but the land. I mean, they chopped down our forests. They ate all the livestock, the Union troops. People had nothing. They were just trying to survive. And so there was nothing to petition for. We were just living hand to mouth. And then gradually over time, we forgot that we had these constitutional rights. But I guarantee you, in the eastern and southern states, not so much in the newer states out west. There probably is some, but it's very common. You'll find thousands of petitions. I found one for my 5th great grandfather filed in 1801.
Wow.
And back then they just
That's
look
cool.
like a handwritten letter. You know, my 5th great grandfather, John Gentry, he just said, to the Honorable General Assembly of the state of Tennessee now sitting, whereas your humble petitioner humbly showeth that he was so unfortunate as to become, for the lack of appearance, in a certain Archibald affair, and was forced to suffer a $100 sanction, which was a lot of money in 1801. In the Congress, where I found thousands in the Tennessee Archives Library, in the Congress, there's tens of thousands. And you know, this is a constitutional right. Were you guys ever taught this in school?
Of course not.
No.
No, nobody's been taught. In Tennessee, there's not a single school at any level that teaches our state constitution. And this is the breakdown. You know, George Washington, he said to the Congress, what subject could be equally important than teaching our youth the science of government to those who are to become the future guardians of liberty?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, from that, and that's why I use my campaign to educate. There's nothing more important. Reform in government isn't going to come from government. It's going to have to come from the people, and it's going to have to come from an educated people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that's what we've got to do, is first learn and research. Like, for example, Article 1, Section 30, hereditary emoluments, privileges, honors shall not be conferred in this state. What the heck does that mean? Hereditary emoluments. You know, we don't know. I know because I went and researched it. But there are some pieces of language like that we don't know that are actually very important. And especially the right to apply to those invested with the powers of government by address or remonstrance.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what that means. We don't know how to exercise that right. And it is our most powerful constitutional right. And actually, all other rights come from the right of petition. We have free speech, freedom of religion, the right to keep and bear arms because of the right of the people to petition for redress of grievances. It's in United States v. Cruikshank, 1800s case. The Supreme Court of the United States said fundamental to a government, Republican in character or form, is the right of the people to petition for redress of grievances. It's fundamental to our form of government, and we're not taught.
And that's what we're dealing with right now. That lack of being able to redress our grievances is exactly why we're dealing with this level of tyrannical government that we're dealing with. We've not been able to get our voices heard. They haven't been heard.
So,
they haven't been heard for 160 years.
And so, you know, for myself, I was heard like that because I had started building up a following.
Mm.
You know, people were watching the publicity of doing that. You know, that's why I was heard. Another guy tried to exercise that right up in Massachusetts, wouldn't even announce it on the floor because he had no publicity.
Well, we went to the Senate and attempted just to set an appointment with a senator. We went to every single office to try to set an appointment, and not a single one would even set an appointment with us. They actually had 5 police officers gang stalk us through the entire building.
Yeah, when I first started going down to the Tennessee General Assembly, after I exercised that right, after I was announced on the floor, I started going and meeting with members of the Tennessee House of Representatives, and they have this little scheme that they run, very common here in Tennessee. Maybe you guys saw it. I call them up and say, hey, I would like to meet with Representative so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a constituent. No, I'm not. Well, he doesn't meet with non-constituents. I'm like, well, this matter affects all of Tennessee, and I would like to meet with him. Well, we don't do appointments on Tuesdays. You're going to have to call back on Thursday. And so that gets rid of a lot of people just because they're disorganized and they don't go back and make the appointment on Thursday. And so I'm tenacious. Squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know, if you accept no for an answer, you're going to get no for an answer. I don't accept no. I don't accept you don't meet with constituents. You know, I just keep nagging them. And if they send me to voicemail, I go drive my butt down to the Capitol and I go walk into their office. Why won't you meet with me? And so
that's what we did.
We tried to do
So
that.
after 100 phone calls,
meeting with 70, I think over 70 members of the Tennessee House of Representatives. Well, we had 99. You know, I met with over 2/3 of the entire House, one-on-one meetings over about a 3 or 4 week period where I went down there. It takes persistence and tenacity.
But talking to those people, did that accomplish anything at all? I mean, it seems like we're still dealing with the same things.
I taught a lot of them about our state constitution. And I think, you know, I filed that remonstrance on I think it was January 19th, if we look back in the video. It wasn't until July that they reorganized that Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct. So I think, going down there and talking to them about the corruption in the judiciary and what's going on, I think that's what finally resulted in that reorganization of the Board of Judicial Conduct.
Mm-hmm.
But what I recommend to people out there is build a following, you know, first of all, through things like social media, run for office, you know, and do it as a legitimate candidate, you know, learn the process. And when you are a candidate for state house or state senate and you introduce yourself, then people are like, oh, what do you got to say?
Right.
You know, never, ever present yourself as a victim of corruption. Society shuns victims. I never talk about, you know, what they did to me. I talk about what they're doing to other people. I talk about violations of the Constitution. I talk about corruption in government, but I never, ever present myself as a victim of government because I'm not. I'm a warrior. You know, I still, even through the corruption that I went through in court proceedings, I still kicked their butt across the board and won my case. You know, they subjected me to a lot of nonsense and bullying and harassing for 2 years of litigation, but I still won the case. And, and you know, they tried to extort me for $280,000 in trial court and another 50 grand in the appellate court. I shut them down. I actually took a file for a restraining order in federal court against the attorneys and judges that were trying to extort me, you know, sort of for attorney fees under color of law. You know, they can be defeated.
Did you win that? Did you get that?
Yes, I defeated them on that.
Wonderful.
That's awesome.
So,
I love hearing success stories. We don't hear enough of them around here.
yeah, it's just, you know, you have to learn the law. You have to learn statutory law. You have to learn rules of procedure, rules of evidence. You got to learn how to fight them according to their rules on their battlefield. And you got to fight them tenaciously, you know. And
You know, that might work in a fair court, but it certainly doesn't work in these courts that we know there are conflicts of interest on their face, and these judges are literally paid for these cases.
They're crime scenes, they're not courts.
yeah, I go on the attack when I start seeing corrupt court proceedings. I start doing motions to disqualify. I appeal those to the appellate court. I start entering evidence into the record, attached as exhibits to motions, so that all of my evidence is on the record.
Mm-hmm.
If I can prove that they've committed federal crime, and a denial of due process is federal crime, and I'll take them under 42 USC 1983 or 18 USC section 241, and I'll bring them to federal court and wear them out in there. You know, you just got to learn how to fight, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But you know, when I was fighting, it was some of the most powerful attorneys across 6 states. This law firm had 981 partners across 6 states, and I sent them tail tucking. So it's possible, but you just got to be strong, and you got to be smart, and you got to learn the rules.
Well, I think you said something really important, because most of our listeners are victims, and many of them start nonprofits, groups. You know, we're all disconnected. We're not working together. And I think that what you said, when victims live in their suffering, they don't have the power to create change. And focusing on the betterment of everyone is how we create better change, instead of what's happened to us personally. Like, that's really powerful.
You know, I used to try to help advocates, you know, across the country. And, you know, a lot of time people are going through PTSD. It's really hard to focus and concentrate. And it's a lot of almost arrogance, where, you know, everybody thinks they have the answer. They don't need to listen to anybody else's solutions. You know, my way is the only way. And, you know, it takes compromise and working together. And I really haven't seen that, you know, in judicial reform advocates, you know, people that are of a mindset of compromising and working together. And so, you know, it's all divided, and divided we fall.
Exactly.
So, you know, I just do my own thing here in Tennessee. I'm a one-man show, but I'm a one-man army. And you know, and I my strength comes from the people. You know, the people that follow my work amplify my voice. You know, and I've got, you know, 10,000 followers, and I've got 300 shares. They know people are watching. You know, and so that's where I think my strength comes from, is from the people that are standing next to me, at least listening in, you know, if not actually doing something out there. There's a lot of people spreading the word, and I think that's the only way you're going to actually get heard, is building up publicity, you know, by building up an audience, and the only way you're going to build an audience is you've got to have smart discussions
Hmm.
and, you know, and gain an understanding of the law and our Constitution and our founding documents and, you know, understanding what the founders were talking about, what they were talking about, you know, when they were writing our Constitution, you know, and that takes a lot of homework. It takes a
Yeah,
lot
I'm
of
pretty
work.
sure when the guys were writing the Declaration of Independence, this is not the country they had in mind that they wanted to live in.
Absolutely not. But I believe in my heart it can be fixed, and I'm working toward that end. And you know, God help the corrupt ones. If I get elected on November 5th, I'm gonna come in there guns blazing, not literally, but you
Yeah.
know, with paperwork.
Yeah, I'm excited to do the same thing. So I actually already had planned on doing the same thing you're doing, and doing it in the next election. So, and I've been trying to encourage the people who follow me to do the same thing. To run for
Yes,
public office. If you have the least bit of intelligence and integrity, if you are, and if you have integrity at all, and if you want to see an end to, the human suffering and slavery, and that's happening to us because of the corruption of the bar associations, the blue wall of silence, and the Democratic Republican Party, then you need to go up there and you need to run for office. And if you're not running for office, you need to be supporting people who have integrity to get into office, because those are the positions of power
yes,
that can effectuate change. And unless we've got good people in those positions of power, we're not going to see any change. At least those are my
that's you know,
thoughts.
it's a big part of why I'm here with. It's a big part of why I'm here with you guys.
Right.
Is I hope you know that my work sets an example for others to follow and to carry on with, you know, after I'm gone. But that's, you know, we need people in all 50 states, you know,
Yes,
doing
we
the
do.
kind of work that I'm doing, you know, and getting out there and being effective, you know, fighting the corruption in government and raising awareness, you know, and not just, oh, it's corrupt, but being able to put it in terms that they can understand.
Right.
Because when you try to explain a court case to somebody and why it's corrupt, like the average person, like they don't understand it, they don't want to hear it. And
Right.
plus they don't want
It's
they don't want
overwhelming.
to hear about victims. You know, what I talk about are specific instances like in transcripts where you can obviously see a judge bullying a litigant or violating rights of a litigant to be heard. You
Hmm.
know, I talk about like those kind of things. I talk about, you know, a big one for me, our state constitution prohibits judges from holding second offices. And here in Tennessee, we have 2 judges in the Code Commission and 2 judges in the or 8 judges in the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct acting in gross violation of our state constitution, holding expressly prohibited offices of trust. And that's actually the root of all of the corruption is judges holding prohibited offices.
Hmm.
So, you know, I talk about things people can understand, you know, hey, right here, no judge shall hold any other office of trust. Right here, Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct, judges holding offices of trust.
We spent a few hours listening to you last night, and I really encourage anyone listening right now to get on YouTube, look up John Gentry. He has a lot of amazing things to say that might not have even been covered in this discussion. Especially if you live in Tennessee before you vote, get on YouTube and look him up because what he has to say is truly amazing and what this country needs.
Yeah, we definitely support you, John.
Yeah, it's not, you know, and for the record, it's not me. This isn't my work. I'm rediscovering the founders' work.
Hmm.
That's all I'm doing. You know, I mean, I had the strength to stand up and push it, but this is not my work. You know,
You're a warrior of truth,
you know,
and that's
it's,
something that's seriously lacking in our country right now is honesty.
yeah, and that's, you know, that's what it is. I mean, I've done everything humanly possible to reform corruption in government, literally, you know, meeting one-on-one with 70 legislators, three cases in the Supreme Court of the United States, 2 remonstrances to the Tennessee General Assembly, years of my life spent in this fight. And the one thing I've learned, it's got to come from the people, and we've got to educate them and get them interested in learning about our state constitution and learning about these incredible rights that we have. And, trying to wake them up, that we can have a voice in government. We can take back control of our government. We just got to stand up and exercise these rights.
And don't I preach it? That's literally something I talk about almost every time people see me on here. Is just about, we have got to stand up. It's going to take a massive group. It's going to take we the people. It's not going to take one person. It's going to take John Gentry in office. It's going to take me in office. It's going to take, a lot of these other people with integrity who have the strength and passion to be able to see it through, to get in those positions of power, to be able to effectuate that change. It's going to take the people to know what their rights are and start exercising those rights and know how to protect their rights. And that's, education. We're going to have to start working on maybe that's actually one of the topics for our board meeting tomorrow, or on Thursday, is going to be to create some slideshows, some presentations where people can, watch this and learn what their rights are and learn how to defend their rights when they're being violated. But, this can go a little bit deeper though. One of my ideas that I've had and I've been throwing around for about a year now is that we take these police officers and we take their jobs and we turn them from statute, code, ordinance, and policy enforcers, and we turn their jobs into rights enforcers. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to stick to. I always want to stick to solutions, and I think we chatted about this on text the other day. It comes down to justice, fair treatment of the people. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want is just to be treated fairly. And you can't have justice if you can't raise your hand and
Right.
say, I've suffered injustice. And that's what this right of petition is. You also can't have justice if you don't have fair courts. And you can't have fair courts without judicial accountability. And in every state, they now have a judicial oversight agency made up of judges and attorneys.
Exactly.
Everyone falls under the state bar.
And they're all bar association members. There might be
And
one or two citizens on the board if they're lucky.
you cannot have the fox watching the hen house. Judicial oversight is legislative power. And these judicial oversight agencies are a violation of separation of powers in our state constitutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's Article 5 in I think every state constitution. The House has the sole power of impeachment. And in Tennessee, Article 6, Section 6, judges can be removed by concurrent vote of both houses. So these are the two number one things that have to get fixed before anything else can get fixed, is we have to restore the power of the legislative houses to impeach judges and restore the right of the people to petition the legislature. Everything else that we try to accomplish is going to prove futile. No matter what it is going to prove futile.
But is impeachment really enough? I mean, we have judges who are money laundering, trafficking children, intentionally assisting pedophiles. Like where does lawful enforcement come into play as for adequate consequences that if any of us normal people were to do, we would be in prison for?
The only way it's going to happen is if the people come together and demand that our right to petition government is restored. That is the only way these judges are going to be reined in. We have them here in Tennessee, child trafficking, by judges. We got, Casey Moreland here who got caught on video bribing a police officer $10,000 to plant drugs in a car. We have Judge Davenport here incarcerating children in juvenile court who hadn't even committed crimes. I mean, we can go on all day and talk about how corrupt judges are. We need to talk about the solution to it. And the
Right.
solution, the only solution, is if our legislative houses start impeaching judges again. We haven't, here in Tennessee, we have not had a judge impeached since the year I was born. 1965 was the last time they impeached a judge. And we all know that we have an incredible problem with corruption in the judiciary, and they just won't impeach them. And it's because our legislators are actually afraid of the judicial branch. And so,
Well, and the reason why is because the judicial branch is the Bar Association, and the Bar Association, they work direct. Honestly, I don't think anybody's scared of anybody.
They've monopolized the practice of law.
They completely monopolized the nationwide and worldwide the practice of law. And then on top of that, you've got these legislators. They work directly with bar association members because it's the bar association members who write the legislation that they pass, the legislation that's subversive to our rights. So that in itself is a conspiracy between these Congresses and the bar association. And most of these members of Congress are members of the bar anyway.
Mhm.
And how are you going to fix the problem?
Yeah, well, that's it. So I mean, there's a few ways, but tackling it your way is most certainly that is key. We have to have our voices heard. That's a huge part of this. Is we haven't been heard for over 100 years.
If we had people file remonstrances in every single state all together and follow his process, what a big impact that would have.
Yeah, and hopefully we don't all have to file federal lawsuits in order to do it.
Yeah, my experience is that you need to have publicity. You need to have people behind you watching, and then you're going to have exercise that right. Bring a petition to your legislative houses, and then you're going to need to be prepared to defend that right in court and take them to court and sue them in court, and get it all out and make it public to people and let them see how corrupt it is. And
well, that's what we've been doing. I mean, we've done several videos where we go directly to the places, these havens of our government, the havens of their corruption. We've been to the Attorney General, the Senate. We went to the Capitol was really interesting, and so many all these places we went to, and a lot of them wouldn't even let us in the front door. So these are supposed to be public buildings, but they have them closed off to the public.
And for myself, it's only been partially successful. They're just announcing these needs now. And it's not just me. I mean, any citizen in Tennessee who exercises this right now, they know they'll be announced on the floor. I guarantee it.
That's wonderful.
Any citizen here in Tennessee that exercises this right, I guarantee they'll be announced on the floor because I've taught them and I've fought for this right here in Tennessee. The next step is these things need to go to committee for discussion and back to the floor for a vote on whether to do it or not. That's not happening. That's still more work that I need to get done here. And what I see is I need to get into office and do it. And so I've got to work. I've been working since January, 7 days a week, all day, every day since January, trying to get elected, talking to thousands of voters. And I'm getting ready to find out here in another month, whether I've reached enough people or not. But that's the only solution that I see is, running for office and getting in office, and building some relationships in the legislative houses. I've got a few, I know a couple of senators and a couple of House members, and there'll be more that are going to come stand next to me. But it's, we're going to have to build consensus and do it, that way. It's the only way I see it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. People behind us and getting in office.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you and Holly tag teaming, taking out these child traffickers and these Senate hearings. So
what I would encourage you guys is learn more about this right. On my website, there's a resource document page I think the last document on there is an analysis, the absolute right of petition. And this is a law school law review article. And actually, I couldn't find this thing online. I had to actually go, I think it was Cincinnati College of Law, Law Review. I think that's where it was. And it was actually cited by the Tennessee Court of Appeals. I didn't find this. The Court of Appeals found it for me, citing it in opinion. And I always go look up whatever they cite, see if that's what it really says. It's actually probably the best article going back to the 12th century when this was exercised, or in the when it was first put in the Magna Carta, and then going through Great Britain, England, constitutional history of medieval England, and then coming to the Americas and getting enshrined in our Bill of Rights, this right to petition. It's about 30 pages. It's a great homework for you guys. I also encourage you, Google the Annals of Library of Congress, Annals of Congress, and just page through them. And at the beginning of each day, it has, Monday, June 3rd, 1841 or whatever. And it's always the beginning of each day is when they announce the petitions. So you can just kind of skim through the pages and look for the bold print for the date, and then just check that paragraph, and you'll start to see the kind of petitions that people filed back in the 1800s. And I'd say, go to your state legislative library. In Tennessee, it's called the Tennessee Archives Library. Every state has a legislative library. And go talk to the chief legislative librarian and ask him about petitions that were filed in the 1800s. And these legislative librarians are incredibly helpful. And you can get old house journals. Ask the chief legislative librarian, can you get me, the 1820 House Journal, or 1820 through 1830? Give me all the House journals and just page through them. And you'll see the same thing. At the beginning of each day, petitions were announced. Mm-hmm. Learn the history about this right, and how it was exercised. And then you can start to defend the right and fight for the right once you learn the history about it, And it is some of the most interesting reading I've ever had in my life. Everybody, half this country believes we had a fraudulent election in 2020. And half the people think everything was fine. And I've got it on my website. There was this guy, Talaferino, who's running for the Virginia United States Congress House of Representatives for the state of Virginia. And he lost to this guy, Hungerford. And so he petitioned the Congress, exercising this right to petition for redress of grievances. The Congress did an investigation. They subpoenaed land titles, compared them to voter rolls. They subpoenaed sheriffs, deposed them, and asked them if they knew certain voters in there. And as a result of the investigation, they overturned the election for a congressional seat.
Wow.
And this is what President Trump should have done. President Trump should have got 80 million people to co-sign a remonstrance. You remember I told you about the legislative rules of order in our state houses? You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
The United States Congress has legislative rules of order. You can Google it and find them. Rule 12, Section 3, a member having a petition shall file it with the clerk. It's still in their rules. We just don't know how to exercise it. And so learn the rules, learn the history about this right, because that's the only way you're going to be able to defend it. Is if you learn the rich history, about where this right is from. And I've put out, plenty of educational materials on there. Email me. My email address, johnG@wethepeoplev50.com. Email me. I'll send you an electronic copy of my book explaining the Tennessee Constitution. And I've got tons of links in there to the Library of Congress, Supreme Court of the United States. In footnote, you can retype those links and I actually go through and explain a lot of the history, and I include a step-by-step process of how to exercise this right. And so,
That's
that's
amazing.
another great resource, is all the research that I've put into it. So ask me, for an electronic copy of my book. I'm happy to give it to anyone for free.
Yeah, we're definitely going to put a link to your site on our site. So
Absolutely. I did have a question, because I think a lot of listeners would like to know, when you are elected a senator, what kind of opportunities and powers will you be able to accomplish that you're unable to accomplish now? Like what will you be able to do as a senator that you're not in the position to do right now?
Well, myself and at least one other citizen, for example, we have petitioned to exercise this right, protesting judges holding prohibited offices. And the only response I've got came from a Senator Kerry Roberts, actually not a completely bad guy. And he said, well, other legal scholars and members don't agree that this is an office of trust prohibited in the state constitution. I'm like, well, who are they? What's their proof? What are they relying on to say that it's not an office of trust? Because I got a whole bunch of books behind me. 1890, a treatise on the law of offices and officers that says it is an office of trust. And so I have, one of the top legal scholars in the entire country saying it's an office of trust. You show me who you've got. Well, as a senator, they can't just brush me off. I'm going to file legislation to abolish the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct and the Tennessee Code Commission. I'm gonna sponsor a bill, and I'm gonna argue my butt off, and I'm gonna find somebody in the House that'll co-sponsor in the House with me, and I am going to argue, and if I have to force the issue, I will, as a senator. I can't do it as a citizen. As a citizen, as a senator, under state statute, if I ask for an opinion from the Attorney General, they have to give me one. And so I'm going to demand that the Attorney General write an opinion why this is not an office of trust and why this corrupt agency should not be abolished. And so I think, as a senator, I'm going to have the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct abolished. And that the process is that when citizens have complaints against judges, they're going to remonstrate to the Tennessee General Assembly, and then they're going to go to the Judicial Committee, and that citizen is going to be able to come in and testify in front of the Judiciary Committee as to whether this judge should be removed or impeached.
that's
And the judge
wonderful.
is fine. Welcome to come in there and defend yourself. That's number one, what I hope to accomplish. The other thing is, one of the first things I'm going to do is sponsor legislation, the Restoring Public Knowledge Act, requiring every school in Tennessee to teach the state constitution, starting in the 5th grade through high school, and comprehensively teach our state constitution. And I'm going to look forward to how senators and representatives respond, that they don't want to mandate our Constitution being taught, and why they want to keep our people ignorant of rights and form of government established in our state Constitution. And I think they're going to find it quite embarrassing, because I'll embarrass them. If they
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the education system's a joke. It's literally, JD Rockefeller, he got what he wanted. He got a society of people who are workers and not thinkers.
And I want that curriculum for teaching our state constitution approved in the Tennessee Senate, so I can approve the curriculum myself.
That would be amazing.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that, what's law in one state is law in every state. What's law in one place is law everywhere in the United States. And that has case law to back it up. So, if you can manage to do something like that, that impactful in Tennessee, it literally just lays the framework for the rest of the United States to be able to make the same actions and make the same legal claims. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in there. I really am.
There's a few good legislators, both in the House and the Senate. I think, the other ones, they just need somebody that has the courage to stand up and do it. because the other ones don't have that courage, you know, to stand. There's not a senator or representative that will sponsor a bill to abolish the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct. John Gentry has that courage, though. And
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. That's going to be
Divinely called.
right up there with the Restoring Public Knowledge Act.
That's definitely a step in getting some accountability. So
well, we've been going about an hour, guys. I gotta push off here, but
yeah, that's fine.
I really enjoyed it. And I really appreciate, you know, you guys wanting to learn about this. Yeah.
We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Yes,
So,
sir.
you know, I understand that you have got a really busy schedule and everything that you do, and we do too. But we have the same goals in mind, and we want to see a world where people are free and safe, and you know, we don't want to see live in a world where the law, the Constitution, the supreme law of the land is violated, and people who can get away with it are doing that for profit. It's not a fun system. So we all want to see justice. All want to see peace. We all want to see freedom. We all want to see safety. And as long as people, you know, do like you're doing, run for office. If you have integrity, get into a position of power where you can effectuate change. Please check out John Gentry. He's got his website. What was your website again?
We the People, just like you would expect. V as in Victor 50.com.
We the People, V as in Victor 50.com. Thank you so much, John Gentry.
You know, that's the people versus the 50 states, because all 50 states are corrupt. That's what that means.
Thank you. Thank you. It's perfect.
Thank you so much.
It's perfect. So we are definitely going to be partnered up with you. And hopefully, you know, you get this, you win this in November. And you know, either way, we hope to continue a relationship with you, John, because we know that the work you're doing is good.
I'm ready to stand with anybody who's ready to stand up for the love of our Constitution and restoring our republic. So I can see the sincerity in your eyes, man.
Thank you, John. And we really do appreciate you, man.
All right, guys. All right. Well, thank you guys for the time. I appreciate it, and I really encourage you. You know, keep learning. It is a long, hard road. I've been at this, you know, going on 10 years. But stay tenacious and keep teaching. I gave you guys the reading materials that I just mentioned earlier. Man, that's enough for months of reading for you guys in the annals of Congress. It's fascinating stuff to learn our history. You know, the way the founders, when they built this country, it's absolutely fascinating.
It really is. No, I love digging into it. History is my favorite part of doing all this work is, you know, just learning the history of our country and, you know, how things were and how we got to this point.
That's where the answers are. They went through the same thing we're going through right now. That's why they declared independence. And they did a very good job coming up with solutions in our constitutions. You know, we just forgot, hadn't been taught.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you guys, y'all have a good night, and
you too.
God bless and stay strong.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Thank you.